Meta OCD, when the OCD is about having OCD. Do you obsess whether or not every action you take is driven by your OCD? Maybe you even obsess that you're going to have obsessions or OCD symptoms. It's not even about your specific topic anymore, but you might obsess about obsessing. This is called Meta OCD. Hi, my name is Nathan Peterson. I am a specialist with OCD and anxiety-related disorders. I create videos every single week on tips and tricks that will help you through your OCD, anxiety, tics and Tourette's, hair pulling and skin picking, and many others. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of those. Whenever somebody has an anxiety reaction, it's almost like trauma to the body. Typically, we can fear that it's going to happen again. Some may even obsess that it's going to happen over and over and over again, causing the topic to now be irrelevant. And the fear is now that you're going to obsess about it, that it's going to happen again. Some worry that when they are in these obsessions that they will just never end. They are going to continue to obsess. So they're wondering, will my obsession ever go away? Here is an example of what meta OCD might look like for somebody. Let's say somebody named Michelle has contaminated OCD. So Michelle is worried that something will infect her, make her sick. Something falls on the floor. She picks it up. She washes it in a ritualized way. It's got to be for 20 seconds. It's got to be the front. It's got to be the back. They got to do whatever they got to do until it feels okay again. So in this situation, the obsession is the germs, the contaminant, the things that make it dirty. The trigger was the item that fell to the floor. The compulsion was the ritual, the cleaning, how much time it took them to actually do this behavior. It makes them feel better. So if somebody is struggling with meta OCD, sometimes they feel like they're lying to themselves and those around them about having OCD, that maybe this isn't OCD. Maybe this is just an excuse. So taking this situation, this person might start obsessing that they might start obsessing. They might start worrying that this thing that fell on the ground that they cleaned caused a lot of distress, almost some trauma in their life because it took them so long to clean it, that they're not really worried about the contaminant. They're more worried about what's the possibility that I'm going to obsess again. That is what meta OCD is all about. It's taking away from the topic, the theme, and it's obsessing about obsessing, or taking something smaller from the obsession and actually obsessing about that. When someone has an intrusive thought like, you're a bad person because you had that blasphemous thought, they immediately try to come up with some reasons for it. A compulsion that they could do to end the worry. Sometimes they worry that they're only coming up with the compulsion because they're just associating it as OCD. Like, what if it's not OCD and they're just coming up with this excuse and they really are blasphemous? But if they don't do any compulsion at all, then it seems like they don't really have OCD. So it becomes a very sticky situation. If they make themselves do the compulsion, then it's also a lie. Man, do I have OCD or do I not? It's confusing, right? If they have OCD, then all is good. They weren't really blasphemous. If they don't have OCD, man, they might actually be blasphemous. But that tends to be the obsession. That's what the meta OCD is all about. It's figuring it all out. Not really the topic, it's figuring out the obsession. It's figuring out if they even have OCD or not. So in the end, this usually results in the person being able to interact with the things that may trigger these thoughts. So using this situation, the obsession is being a compulsive liar or lying about possibly having OCD, using it as an excuse. The trigger is the obsessive thought about being a bad person. The compulsion was to actually just come up with a compulsion, design a compulsion. And then once they come up with that compulsion, they need to reject it and then avoid anything that resembles that intrusive thought. Man, this is confusing, but the brain is so tricky. Many are fearful and afraid that they are lying about their OCD. A lot of it is just figuring it out. Do I have OCD? Do I not? Is this OCD? Is this not? What tends to happen is that people may misidentify their compulsions. It was the compulsion to design and reject the compulsion and then avoid the trigger. The compulsion included the lack of action, which makes it hard to identify. A lot of people think you need to have some type of action for it to be a compulsion, but ultimately, someone does not have to be doing some type of action to be doing a compulsion. A lot of compulsions are actually mental. They are planning things out, they're avoidance, they're problem solving, they're thinking through everything. Is this OCD? Is this not? Is this really me? Is this not? Will I obsess again? Will I not? In my practice, I would say that almost all individuals ask at one point or another if they have OCD. Like, hey Nate, do you think this is OCD or is it not? And typically, when someone questions this, is this OCD or is it not? Most of the time, it's OCD. And the reason we say it's OCD is because you think about anything else in your life. How often do you have to question yourself? Question what you're doing? Question your motives? Not very often. We often just know what to do, what we're doing, what it is. So when someone says, is this OCD? I look for a sense of urgency to figure that out, a sense of anxiety. When those two are connected with this thought, often it's OCD because people don't have a sense of urgency to figure this out when it's not. Another part of meta OCD is, like I said, obsessing about obsessing. The topic or fear no longer matters. What matters is that they're obsessing and it's annoying and it's frustrating and it won't stop. So when they finally get it to stop, their brain's like, oh no, I hope that doesn't happen again. When is that gonna happen again? I sure hope that doesn't happen again. They can't stop focusing on how they're obsessing and they wonder how long it's going to last. They search for relief from it, which causes them to notice it even more. Notice obsessing even more because they don't want it. They're avoiding it. I recently went to a doctor about my ears. I had some ringing in my ears. And he said to me, Nate, did you know that the only people who say that this is a problem for them are the ones who are noticing it? And I'm like, well, duh. Yeah, of course. If I didn't notice it, it wouldn't be a problem. And he said, exactly. The more you're noticing it, the more you don't want it to happen, the more you're gonna notice it. And I'm like, man, that is exactly what this treatment is all about. The treatment is to take value and power away from it so that you're not noticing it anymore. And so what is the treatment? The treatment is exposure and response prevention. As we've talked before, exposure and response prevention is the thing that retrains your brain. Your brain starts learning that if you start reacting to this differently, it's gonna learn from it. It's gonna say, wait a second, I threw out some alarms your way, told you you're in danger. Why are you not responding to it the way I want you to? You're supposed to run, you're supposed to scream, you're supposed to figure it out, you're supposed to research, you're supposed to notice, but why aren't you doing that anymore? It's no fun. And those intrusive thoughts start slowing down. So essentially you're facing your fears. You're taking this like, oh, I hope I don't obsess again, and you're saying, I love this obsession. I hope it comes back. Man, it'd be great if I woke up in the middle of the night and I started obsessing. That would be so great. I hope that happens. Man, that was such a wonderful experience when I had those obsessions today. I really want it to happen again. Please, 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 will you bring me those obsessions again? That would be so wonderful. It feels like you're doing a lot of acting, of course, but guess what? Your brain learns from that. Of course, it's a little more complicated than using some of these statements, but we're facing the fear. We're stepping closer to the threat. You're taking power and value away from it. If your brain says don't notice, then you're like, I'm going to notice. Thank you so much. What if you obsess again? Oh, I sure hope I do. Maybe I will go see that thing or do that behavior again that's gonna possibly make me obsess, because that's exactly what I want right now. That would be awesome. And we're gonna sit there with that. We're not gonna do any compulsions, and your brain is going to learn, wow, you didn't do any compulsions and you tend to feel a little bit better. So maybe I'm throwing you some false signals here and maybe I should stop. So my question for you, have you ever struggled with meta OCD? Questioned if you have OCD? What does it look like for you? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences. And do you need a little extra help with your OCD? So I've created an online course that takes you through understanding your own OCD, your topics, your themes, and go through the treatment for it. It's everything I teach individuals in my office, as if you were doing a session with me. I'll link that down in the description below. I hope this video was helpful for you, and remember, when it comes to your OCD, it is your job to face the unknown.